Hello and welcome. It's our slightly truncated Confessions podcast because of stuff happening. This week's very concise collection of terrible tales. Basically, you just get two this week. Some belligerent button pushing and a slithering slice of slosh salesman shenanigans. Nice. Here they are. The collective are herein assembled. One of them has a hat. And you're right, it's Matt wearing a little jaunty bowler hat today.
Oh, yes, that's what I do.
Which is the way most of the sports room are.
I forgot it was still on, actually. Do you remember when your grandma used to wear a hat indoors while she was making the tea? Mine did. And I'm also sharing headphones with Rebecca, and it's really loud. Have you got a problem with your hearing?
I can't, sorry?
Hey! Oh,
very good.
There we go.
You hear this music running in the background, the Confessions music. Can I start now? This is from Dan. Dan, thank you very much for tonight's confession. Dear Father Simon and the Collective, my confession relates to events from many years ago when I studied at the venerable esteemed institution of Cambridge University. Having come from a pretty rough state school, the world of college punts, twisted spires and Latin recitals was a very different one from my school days, and at first seemed a little intimidating. However, university also provided an excellent opportunity to meet new people and drink new drinks. All right. And soon I embraced my posh new surroundings. In particular, I became a big fan of attending Formal Hall, where one could dine on a 3-course meal for £2.88p, which, when combined with a cheap bottle of wine, or two for special occasions, always proved a fine start to a night's entertainment. This is education. We should all have had education like this. One evening I donned my Poncy college gown and set off to the Formal Hall. Tonight was a 2-bottle night for some reason I can't remember. The college's hall was set at the base of its imposing tower, and its high stone walls had huge portraits of famous luminaries from centuries past hung between the stained glass windows. After a few glasses of cheap plonk, something caught my eye. Amongst the wood panelling, on the lower parts of the walls, there was a small handle on one section. A secret panel. After a few more glasses for Dutch courage, I excused myself, and while supposedly on the way to the toilet, approached the panel. Very cautiously, I grasped the handle and pulled it back to reveal what lay beneath. Behind the secret panel, there was what I can only describe as a secret button. I closed the panel and returned to my seat to report to my friends what had happened. The message they replied with was clear. I should drink more wine, return to the secret panel, and press the secret button. Several glasses later I was back, and once again I nervously opened the secret panel. With a trembling finger I reached in, held my breath, and pressed the secret button. But nothing happened. Rather disappointed, I closed the secret panel and returned to my seat. Despite the anticlimax, speculation mounted about what the button might have actually done. Perhaps it set off an alarm in the kitchens, summoning a servant. Perhaps it had activated a dumb waiter fetching more port from the cellars. Perhaps it had opened a sluice gate on the River Cam somewhere, flooding some poor unsuspecting village owned by the college, as I understood happened sometimes. More wine flowed, and over the next few hours, each of my friends made covert trips to press the secret button behind the secret panel, something which somehow remained exciting in our drunken state, despite the fact that, in practice, I think we all assumed that the button didn't do anything. We assumed it was a leftover relic from a day when it performed a crucial function. These days it was just a small button left in a wall which did nothing. However, we were wrong. The next day, just after midday, I awoke and staggered out of my room with a painful head in search of food. On my way out I was greeted by my neighbour, a nerdy, beardy-looking type who also looked rather tired. "You okay?" I asked him, wondering if he'd had a similar night to mine. "Not really," he replied. "I had an exam this morning, but I did terribly." "How come?" I asked. He didn't look the type to do terribly badly in an exam. "I was so tired I could barely think," he replied, and went on to explain that he'd gone for an early night, but hadn't been able to sleep until the early hours of the morning, as for some inexplicable reason the college bells had been ringing on and off for several hours late into the night. My heart fell as realization dawned. The mysterious secret button behind the secret panel had been starting and then stopping the tolling of the huge college bells high above us at the top of the college tower. The college hall had extremely thick stone walls, and so within its confines we'd been unable to hear them. The rest of the college, on the other hand, well, along with much of the surrounding neighbourhood, had been extremely able to hear them for quite a long time, as it turned out. I asked forgiveness, therefore, not from the college, who are rich enough to look after themselves, but rather from my neighbour, who probably flunked his exam and didn't get the degree that he wanted and maybe needed, perhaps resulting in him falling into a life of crime rather than one of accountancy or something equally inoffensive. He's making a few artistic leaps here, is Dan. I also beseech any listeners who are currently attending this unnamed college in this story not to check for secret panels in the walls of the college hall, and certainly not to press any secret button that they may find hidden beneath, lest they be forced to plead for forgiveness, as I do now from your humble collective. Thank you, Dan. The story, the secret button behind the secret panel, like it very much, and it rings the secret bells.
Very funny, very Hogwarts, isn't it?
It is very Hogwarts, yes.
I want to ask why the bell for the button for the bells was in the dining hall. I mean, what use could it possibly have there? If you want a spontaneous ringing of the bell, just push here while you're having your meal.
Yes, it could have been labelled as well.
Yeah, exactly. And
Clearly
also, if the bells were ringing all over college, you'd imagine that some Don would have run into the dining hall and said, "Who's ringing the bell?" Which didn't happen. But I think it's all very innocent, and they were students. They didn't know they were doing anything wrong. That's what student life is all about, isn't it? Annoying your fellow students. So you're completely forgiven, Dan.
That was what your education was all about, was it? What do you think, Mother Superior? What do you make of that?
I'm sure my hearing will resume in the fullness of time. I think I agree with everything Rebecca said, that actually it was an odd place to put a bell, which wasn't marked. They were all a little bit worse for wear, so they probably didn't know what they were doing. I think it's all very innocent. It's the kind of thing I would do. If I found a secret door and a secret bell, I would be forced to press it.
There is something irresistible. Secret panel, got to open it. Secret handle, got to press it. Secret button.
You've got to push it. So you're completely forgiven.
I wonder how many secret button and secret panel confessions there are. But anyway, Brother Matthew, what do you say?
I would have thought. Definitely, everyone sitting here would definitely push a secret button given the chance. However, there's something of a design flaw here in having your button to ring the bells in the very place where you can't hear whether the bells are ringing or not.
It's true.
So it's actually the university's fault for putting this button in a very silly place instead of putting it somewhere where you might even be able to hear the thing that you're pushing the button for. So completely forgiven, because we all do it. And also, what are you doing putting your button there?
So whoever put the bells up hundreds of years ago...
Yes,
at
all their
Formal
fault.
Hall,
The monks or whatever they were with their buttons.
Were the monks, were they?
Yeah.
So here's tonight's confession. It comes from Crocodile Dundee. You might be interested to know. Crocodile Dundee, thank you very much indeed for tonight's tale. Dear Father Mayo, Mother Superior, the Heavenly Hostess, and Matt. My soul has been sorely... You couldn't think of anything.
No, fair enough.
My soul has been sorely troubled for many years now, and I beg the collective to lift the heavy burden of guilt from my now sagging shoulders. Also, once a year around this time, a TV celebrity show broadcast on a commercial channel brings the horrific sequence of events I'm about to outline flooding back in vivid detail. The year is 2001, and I had been working as a salesman in Australia for a couple of years. Life was good. I was living a cosmopolitan life in Melbourne and doing my job well, possibly due to working more than 2 hours a day, unlike most of my colleagues. But they made up for that with regular taunts about the Aussie-GB rivalry. As a reward for my moderate efforts, I was included in the list of top achievers from around the country to be sent on a special conference. This was a much prized reward, staying in a 5-star resort somewhere on the coast with all expenses covered. Being sophisticated salespeople who would never abuse this privilege, the number of hotels where our company's custom was still valued shrank by one every year. The destination for that year's conference was Port Douglas in northern Queensland. I'd looked it up on the web. It seemed perfect. Great hotels, endless beaches, bars everywhere. It was incredibly hot and humid as I left the plane, but that was to be expected. And it was with great anticipation that I boarded the coach to take me and my fellow workers to what must certainly be the most luxurious hotel I'd ever stayed at. Port Douglas looked great as we drove up to it, through it, and kept on going. It was at this point our general manager, Daniel, announced over the coach PA that due to unfortunate circumstances in the past, this year's conference was going to be very different. For a start, there would actually be a conference. Every day, attendance obligatory, starting at 8 a.m. Alcohol would be strictly limited. 2 drinks vouchers per person per day. And so we wouldn't be tempted to hit the local bars. The whole thing would take place in an eco-lodge in the middle of the rainforest where the coach was currently heading. It was not the happiest coach full of sales staff there's ever been that pulled up at the lodge a couple of hours later. By the third day, a splinter group had formed, you might like to know, and sneaked out to the nearest hotel bar, greatly assisted by a large roll of drinks vouchers that Daniel hadn't guarded well enough. Maybe it was the enforced abstinence, but the night turned then into a major drinking session. As the evening went on, we were asked to move out onto the veranda, as the other occupants were finding our group of tired and emotional salesmen a rather acquired taste. I think I'd be with them, actually. We were happy to move outside, and although most of us didn't smoke, somehow we ended up having a cigar, the way you do. At the far end of the balcony, hanging from a bracket, was an ultraviolet bug zapper, which was happily crackling every few seconds as another mozzie fell into the smoky death of the floor below. Having worked out that this was an easy source of cooked food, waiting down below, jostling for position, was a writhing mass of the biggest toads I had ever seen. Now, there was something mesmerising about the sight which had us hooked, so intent that we failed to notice that where nature provides one banquet, there are often two. And in the poor light and with slightly blurred vision, it seemed like a small horse's head had come over the railing attached to an impossibly long neck. It took me a moment to figure it out, as I didn't have a clue that snakes normally came in that size. It was truly enormous, but surprisingly quick as it grabbed the largest of the toads and swallowed it whole. Strangely, the Australian seemed delighted with our new companion and greeted it with cries of, "Wow, you're a big fella," and other comments, less broadcastable. That was an Australian accent, by the way, just for a moment. This was when things started to go wrong, and I can't remember who came up with the idea, but we decided that all we had to do was to get the enormous snake to hide in Daniel, our boss's, the guy who said that we couldn't go drinking, in his wardrobe. Getting a key to his room would be no problem, as being professional salespeople, lying to the receptionist would be second nature. The one obvious obstacle to overcome was to get the snake from here to there, as we guessed it wouldn't go of its own accord. One guy, Rob, had the solution. "You three and me will carry it," he said, "if you're not frightened of a little snake." The last comment was said directly to me, and to be fair, I wasn't frightened. I was petrified. Reasoning that the safest part of the snake to get hold of was the portion furthest away from the head, I opted for the tail end. Once we were all in position, Rob gave the command to lift, and we did. Its weight was incredible, even though I had the thinnest end. This could end nastily, couldn't it? Under normal circumstances, I would never have attempted to carry a monster snake whilst holding a lit cigar.
Oh, right.
You think? You think? Yeah. With horror, I realised my error and tried to drop the cigar to the floor, but this caught the snake's eye. Although no contact was made, the glowing tip clearly moved too close to the snake's personal space for comfort. I don't believe snakes are known for their variety of expression, but as its yellow eyes looked back at me, I got a strong sense of indignation and grave offence. Never mind the fact that 4 drunks were carrying it, but never mind. Then a second later, it went ballistic. There was no way we could have hung on to this, even if we wanted to. Fortunately, this was not an option, as we were instantly knocked off our feet, and in so doing, breaking the fall for the snake. Being pinned to the floor by a huge reptile was not how I'd planned to end the evening, but fortunately for us, having regained his honour, it then slid sedately over our bruised bodies and off into the jungle night. No one noticed at the time that I was the cause of the mayhem, and as one of those involved subsequently became my boss, I never explained the sudden change in the snake's demeanour was down to my burning cigar. But now, Father Simon, safely back in England, I sincerely ask forgiveness from you and the collective, not from Daniel, our manager, as we were never likely to get away with our planned revenge anyway. Even in Australia, 4 drunken men carrying a giant serpent across a hotel lobby would probably raise eyebrows. Not from Rob, as I believe he still takes great pleasure in showing anyone that he can find the tiny scar he got in his epic battle with the snake. But I do apologise to all future salesmen who came after me, as that was the end of the firm's partying. We were welcome nowhere anymore. And Simon, I also require forgiveness from the snake, of course, for him or herself. It didn't ask to be manhandled or have a cigar waved close to what turned out to be a surprisingly sensitive area of its body. How was I to know? Although I feel forgiveness may not be forthcoming from certain members of the team, let me assure them and the listeners that my nemesis was back at the same time the next night, although on this occasion he was left completely in peace. Crocodile Dundee with kind of a get me out of here, I'm a serpent confession. Tortured and taunted by a burning cigar. Yeah, what do you say, Sister Rebecca?
It's a bit extreme, this one, isn't it? Because they wanted to punish Daniel because he'd asked them to do some work on a conference. Is that right?
I mean, wanted to have a conference.
Yeah, exactly. So they wanted to put a potentially poisonous snake. I mean, it probably wasn't. I mean, how did they know it wasn't poisonous?
A toad-eating snake.
Exactly. How did they know it wasn't really dangerous?
I don't think they did.
I think this is all a bit extreme and a bit odd, really. And so he's asking the snake for forgiveness as well.
He
so
is.
I think the snake probably doesn't even remember, does he? So, I mean, Is that even relevant?
I suspect the snake doesn't have a concept of
Exactly.
goodness, it just wants
I
to
think
eat
we had
you
a similar
whole.
conversation about a donkey, didn't we, Sal, not so long ago? Anyway, I think we won't go into that. I think, luckily, no harm was done, and it doesn't really matter that these people can't go to the hotel next time. They can go to a different hotel, can't they?
You and Sal
So-
tried to carry a donkey into a
No,
hotel
there was
and
a
put it in a
confession
wardrobe.
involving a donkey and the donkey's feelings. Anyway, I'm going to forgive you, Crocodile Dundee.
Okay, Mother Superior.
I was pretty gripped by this particular story because I didn't know where it was going to end, and I thought it would be much worse than it turned out to
Ended
be.
out in the jungle and they slithered away.
Yeah, and
but they did get banned from all hotels forever.
Yeah, well, I thought the snake would probably bite somebody. And as Rebecca quite rightly says, it could have been a poisonous snake, not just eating toads. But it just was a silly drunken night, wasn't it, that got out of hand.
There was a paragraph where he swallowed Daniel whole, the snake, but I thought we'd better not include that.
Well,
bit.
right, that's just as well. And I think probably it's what they call natural justice, because it was never meant, they were never meant to take this snake and scare the boss, who after all only said, please come to the conference and have 2 drinks a day. So, and I mean, I think it's a shame. Well, is it a shame that he stopped the conferences? How did he know about the whole snake thing, the boss, in order to stop the conferences
Don't
from
ask
that
too
point?
many follow-up
well,
questions.
you know, I was so gripped. I want to know the real stuff. Anyway, I'm going to forgive you.
Daniel was swallowed whole, Matt. I don't think that's relevant.
No. I'm trying to work out how drunk I'd need to be for someone to say, let's carry that massive snake into someone's room. No thanks, I'll have a kebab. I'm not carrying a snake anywhere. Absolutely, it's just unbelievable that would be... And also what I don't get is if he's holding the back end of the snake... How is the snake looking at him with his indignant yellow eyes? It turns round.
You know they bend.
Do they bend?
Yeah.
Oh, right, they're flexible snakes. Right, lovely.
Yeah, it's not-
In which case, I'm going for this
And you think
flexible
I'm
snake.
thick.
This flexible snake I'm going for is... I think I'm definitely going to forgive because he had it coming to him, frankly, this snake, by eating all those toads and being flexible.
On behalf of the toad community.
On behalf of that.
And that was that. But did you forgive? Let us know if you have a confession. Just drop us a line, send us an email, call in, send me a text, go online, all that. More confessions on Monday.
Thanks for listening to this BBC Radio 2 free download. Now, why not try more?
Jazz for me, I guess, is improvisation.
My pick of the best in rhythm and blues.
Music from Richard Thompson, Chris Wood and Pentangle, amongst many, many others.
All at the BBC Radio 2 website.